Warp Pipe Wednesday.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Warp Pipe Wednesday. I'm Russ Lyman.
I'm NES Addict.
This is the shorter format of our long form podcast, the weekly Warp Pipe, which is every Saturday at 7 a.m. But if you need your extra fix, come hang out on Wednesdays as well.
That's right.
We got a suggested topic by Tyler Fit. Reached out to me, I think, on Instagram. You guys can follow us on. We're on Instagram. We got a Facebook page and the community page on YouTube. It's just at the weekly Warp Pipe. And he was asking 80s and 90s trends that we didn't get into. So we didn't hop on the train and we didn't start doing the thing that other kids were doing. He did call Jay out talking about Pokemon.
Yep. It wasn't. I think it was just my age, you know? Like, Pokemon came out when I was in 11th grade.
Okay.
I mean, I was 16 years old. Like, I did watch the cartoons. I remember watching, like, the first season. And, but as far as, like, collecting the cards, just, I don't know.
Right. I was on the same fence. I never got into the card collecting on that, and maybe I watched the cartoon here and there when it turned up, and I'm not too sure why. Maybe because it was also like a game and the cards, because I collected the Marvel cards,
right?
Garbage Pail Kids. I collected, I mean, even baseball cards and football cards. And
but I was much younger with I mean, Garbage Pail Kids was mid 80s, so I was like 5-6 years old collecting Garbage Pail Kids. Marvel cards, I was probably 12, 13, you know. Baseball cards, pretty much whenever. Hockey cards from the time I was about 14 on out. But like Pokemon cards, I mean, like when you're watching this show at 16 years old and it's the first time you'd ever seen it, and you don't already have a pre-existing love for these characters, it seems very childish. You know, I still watched it and found it somewhat enjoyable, but it was like I wasn't like in love with Pikachu, or I didn't need a Bulbasaur, you know, in my life, or a Squirtle.
So you know a few.
Yeah. I know a ton now because my son is into it.
Gotcha.
He's obsessed.
Now, does he play like the games, or it's just collecting the cards?
He just likes to collect the cards, and like me and him play a very basic form of the game. Basically, whoever has the more power on the top, that's who wins. Or like he'll be like, I'm doing this damage to you, and it'll be like he'll have some card that has like 120 damage, and I'll have a Pokemon that only has like 90 health. He'll be like, you're dead. You know what I mean? Like, well, yeah,
you're done.
You have the freaking strongest card you have, and I'm getting all these weak cards. So,
jeez.
But yeah, you know, it's all fun. He gets to win, whatever.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, like, maybe it's just my group of friends didn't also collect them, like, because then I would have had someone to like play with the card game itself. And I don't know. Yeah, it could have been the age.
I think it was. I think I mean, because me and Russ are the same age, what, 6 months apart roughly, and I think just at our age, it was too kiddie, man. It was just too kiddie. You know, like kids that were born just 3-4 years younger than us were like 12 and 13 playing it. So like there's a big difference between like a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old, you know?
Right. I will say, I guess maybe on the not so kiddie, I never got into Magic the Gathering, which I would be like the teenager version of Pokemon, right? It's a card game, but also you could collect the cards, which I did get a few packs of the cards, and it was neat to look at them, and you know, that's that monster or whatever. But again, I had no one to play up against. There were as far as I know, like shops that you could go to that had like tournaments or play nights or whatever. So
did that come out in the 90s?
Yeah, I mean, I could look it up quickly and see when it came out, but I'm pretty sure it did.
Well, you talking about Magic the Gathering does remind me of one 80s trend I didn't get into.
Okay.
But I will say Stranger Things made it look really freaking cool.
1990, jumping in, 1993 it came out.
Okay, 93, so perfect. Okay. But Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. Yeah, I did mention that. Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game. Again, you need that friend group that is also into it, because you can't play that alone.
And I think you would have also needed to be born in like the late 60s or early 70s. So that way, because I don't know when Dungeons and Dragons came out. I'm assuming mid 70s, but I could be wrong. But like,
Yeah, I mean, and then it carried over into the 80s as
yeah,
well, and I'm
but
sure the 90s too.
yeah, it probably did go into the 90s, but I think it was at its peak early 80s, right? Like,
Well, probably because I would say the people that want that role playing adventure, you couldn't do that on a video game as essentially because the graphics were bad. You couldn't visualize seeing that, so you're like, I might as well do a board game version of that if I'm just gonna
oh,
visualize in my mind how this is supposed to look.
that, and it's all pre-internet, right? Like, so you're doing
Hmm.
more board games, you're doing more things with your imagination. You're not using a
True.
computer, or I mean, I guess we had Atari, but like you said, the graphics at that point in the early 80s weren't up to par. So like a game like Zelda might be more like a video game adaptation of what you would kind of think as a D&D in video game form.
Right, Dragon Warrior, Final
Dragon Warrior, yeah,
Fantasy,
exactly.
games like those, or even the computer games that had come out. But yeah, I mean, definitely story driven, and you can have so many campaigns because basically whatever board you have, I guess. Again, I never played it, just assuming how it works because I see you can get new books of new campaigns, and then I assume use similar existing pieces that you have
Yeah.
to play the game. But yeah,
But
I never got any into that.
but like I was saying, Stranger Things made it look very cool and made it look very appealing. Like those four kids sitting around that table, playing this game, they're getting closer to the end, and the mom's like,
Mhm.
"It's time to go to bed," and he's like,
Right.
"We're almost done." And she's like, "You've been down there for like 11 hours," or like whatever,
How
whatever
long
this.
it took. Yeah,
So it's like, it's a pretty involved game, but it looked rad, the way they made it play out.
for sure. And there's people now that live stream the game and they
Yeah.
get into like their role playing of their character that they're playing as. So certainly could be fun. Again, you got to get that core group of people that are all into it, and you can meet weekly and have time for that. But yeah, I never got into it. Closest I got, I did pick up some like pewter figures,
Mm-hmm.
which you have figures that you play with the board, and I think you could almost like
Customize them.
Warhammer, where you can paint them and this and that. And I just like the figures themselves,
Yeah.
but never got into it.
Me either. Me either. What other 90s things was there? Oh, I just thought of one. The Tamagotchi.
The Tamagotchis.
The Tamagotchi was just right at that time, once again, where like it appealed to a younger audience. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
think
I could
about
see that.
2-3 years younger, I might have thought it was the coolest thing ever, but I just didn't care. My friend Brandy had one, and I thought it was like, I messed with hers a few times, but it wasn't like I wanted to go get my own.
Well, I wonder too if it was more geared towards girls than guys.
Probably so, because you're like mothering it, you're feeding it, you're burping it, you're changing it, who knows what you do. I don't know what you do to it, but
If you guys don't know, Tamagotchis were these keychain LCD screen animals, I guess.
pets, yeah.
Pets. And you had to check in on it to like if it needed to be fed, you had to digitally like, I don't know, feed it somehow. And
Or if it was dirty, you had to give it a bath, like
right.
it's like a baby.
But it had an internal clock, so it would know like if you ignored it for 3 days, then it could essentially die because you didn't feed it.
But luckily you can reset it, unlike real babies. Feed your real babies, please.
Please feed your real babies. I was in the store the other day and I did see some like new version of whatever similar to a Tamagotchi. I was actually at a Cracker Barrel and they had like a toy section in there.
They have all the throwback toys.
They have a bunch of Pokemon stuff there too.
Yeah, no, I've bought my son several Pokemon toys there.
See that? There you go.
Including his Charizard. Man, I had another one on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember what it was.
Oh, Furbies.
Oh, there you go. Furbies. Furbies were like a crazy like Christmas present one year. I remember everybody had to have one.
Oh, similar to like the Cabbage Patch Kids, or
and like it was like
whatever.
Tickle Me Elmo. It was like Cabbage Patch Kids of the mid 90s.
So there were these fur ball animals with like, so they're almost like dome shaped with like little feet, ears and these big eyes.
And they had like a flat spot on their head, which was like the sensor, and like
I think a beak too. Yeah, and a beak. So the beak would move, and I think its eyes would open up and close.
And they were all possessed, and they still want to murder you to this day.
Definitely,
it's true.
Definitely true. you heard it here first. Yeah. Again, I would think that's maybe more towards a girl. Like again with this, like the pet.
Yeah.
If they had monster looking ones, then
yeah, why didn't they should have totally did that. That would have been like the greatest selling thing ever.
Like do like a swamp monster looking for like they could have themed it like Furbies, but also made them like vampires, werewolves, mummies. Like
what could they have called it that made it sound tougher? Like spike bees, like so instead of fur they have like spikes on them.
Yeah, gross bees.
Gross bees.
Does it have to be bees on the end?
I don't know. Bees does make it sound kind of silly, right? Yeah, they could have come up with some rad name and then made them more menacing, and then boys could have played with that one. Because I think now I know my friends Mark and Brad both had one growing up, and like the thing with the Furbies was they had their own language apparently that they created, and you could almost like teach them to speak English, or they would teach you to speak Furbish or whatever it was called. But it was real weird. It'd be like, oh, me too. It'd be like something weird like that. And you're like, what are you saying? Did you ever see The Simpsons where they made fun of Furbies?
No.
They called them funzos.
Okay. So the copyright would get in trouble.
Yeah, but they were basically the same thing. And it's a hilarious episode. It's on the Christmas, I think part 2, 4 episode compilation Christmas DVD. There you go.
Okay, there you go.
For funzos.
Yeah, you couldn't get into those as well. Any other trends you can think of?
I mean, Tickle Me Elmo was a crazy thing that happened in the 90s, but we were obviously way too old for that.
Way too old for Tickle Me Elmo.
And that's exactly why I bought one. Just kidding.
To sell later on.
We
did say 80s and 90s. I was trying to think of 80s.
I mean, like, there were like slap bracelets were a big thing, but I remember I was into those.
Right.
At one point, yo-yos were a big thing, but I think I got a yo-yo, or at least I got good at my friend's yo-yo, because like it was like butterfly yo-yos. Like there was a brand called Butterfly, because I guess they could sleep longer or whatever, like spin at the bottom.
Oh, spin at the bottom. Mm-hmm.
Those were a big thing. Pogs were a big thing, but we all know Russ and his yin yang pogs obsession.
Gotta have my yin yang pogs.
Gotta have my yin yang pogs. What else was a big thing? Do you remember like Nickelodean Gak?
Yes.
Was that like a thing?
It was like slime, but how you would describe it? Like slime mixed with foam.
It was like that was called Floam.
Oh, that was Floam.
But Gak it was basically just the slime, but it was almost like you could take a piece of Nickelodeon home with you, and it came in this cool little container that was like almost like someone had like thrown it on the wall and it like splattered. Yes. So it was like a splatter shaped like plastic container, and you could get it in multiple colors. But I remember that kind of being a big thing when it first came out.
Oh,
Micro Machines? Was Micro Machines a thing? I don't know. I'm trying to think of what were things.
What were things?
Like, was Micro Machine like all the craze? I don't know. There it is.
There's the Gak.
Gak.
Yes, I definitely remember Gak.
Gak Splat. And then they came out with Floam later, and Floam was like how you were describing it. Like it was like gluey feeling styrofoam that could be molded.
Right. Yeah, I never got too much into all the I guess the gross phase here with slime and Gak, and I mean the closest thing would be I did have a creepy crawler machine.
Yeah, those were cool. My friend Mark had that.
Where you have it. Basically it was the boy version of the Easy Bake Oven. They're baking, treats and sweets, and then
we're baking glue monsters.
We're baking glue monsters.
Those were cool though.
Definitely. I'd like to get another one. I
ain't gonna lie, me too.
To put in my game room here. It was like an orange oven with like a green base.
Yeah.
And you had like I think an orange like spatula thing or whatever that you would put the trays in. They're like aluminum trays and cook it with the light bulb.
That's it. They were sick though. I'm gonna have to go to eBay like right now.
But yeah, those were a few trends and toys and stuff that we didn't get into during the 80s and 90s. Certainly,
Yep.
we can't be into all of it.
Yeah, if there's any we missed, let us know in the comments below because I'm kind of having a hard time thinking about more of them. But I remember yo-yos being one and everything else we listed. So
yeah, pretty neat. Yeah, if you guys have any suggestions, you could certainly hit us up on any of our social medias. You could give us a call. We have a phone number, 949-682-9277. You can leave a voicemail. You can text message as well. Hit up the weeklywarpipe.com. We have merch on there. We got all the episodes. Yep, grab yourself a mug. We got magnets, t-shirts.
that way you can look as good as we do.
There we go. And yeah, give us your suggestions. And thanks again, Tyler, for the suggestion there.
Sweet.
And that's it. A quickie for this Warp Pipe Wednesday. If you guys want to catch the full podcast, we got every Saturday, 7 a.m. with the weekly Warp Pipe. As always, I'm Russ Lyman, and keep your world fun bit by bit.
Later.